Welcome back to SouFLoTV again, everybody. It is your host with the most. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, please. Click the bell next to the subscribe button so you are notified every time a new video goes up on this channel. And let's get right into the story. So on this channel, we do a lot of stories about moving back to Jamaica. We try to advise expatriates how to move back safely, how to watch yourself and how to go home and enjoy the island and live out your days in fun and laughter and relatively safe. How to keep yourself safe, right? You might think you know it all, but trust me, a lot of stuff you don't know. Jamaica has changed tremendously over the years, and for the past decade, it has been rapidly developing, changing even more. Not just the landscape, but also the mindset of the new generation of people that are there on the island now. So, for those of us who have these dreams of returning to Jamaica after we've lived overseas for many of years and we've gathered our education and we've gathered our experiences and we've gathered our financial resources and our connections and we've built ourselves something sustainable, tangible. And we decide it's time to go back now and live out the rest and live up life on the island. You have to be careful. Not all that glitters is gold, and it helps a lot to have some kind of guidance. Now, this particular story right here, we just did a early morning show, Morning Thoughts Live, where we announced that the verdict came in for the individuals who were accused of taking this man's life after he had moved back to Jamaica, which was his dream to do. And it took him many years to do it after living and working in the UK and putting himself together. He decided it was time to do it, and he did it. He accomplished it. Big, beautiful house overlooking the waters, the type of stuff that we dream of. And then he was murdered in his house in Jamaica. So, one of the angles that we never get to hear that story from is the family members who have to come along after the individual has died. Because a lot of the times, us bloggers, vloggers, and news media, they cover the story from when it first happened. It breaks news. Oh my God, a returning resident killed on the island. And then later on, it's, oh gosh, we've just arrested one or two individuals for it. And then there's the court case, and then there is the verdict and the sentencing, and everybody turns their back on the story after that. This particular one we have for you today is from the perspective of the brother of the individual who lost his life after he had accomplished his dream, moved back to Jamaica, got him a beautiful house. He accomplished the dream and he lost his life in the process. So here we go. In the days after our arrival on the island, there was a lot of confusion. I felt that there were elements of the case that had been carried out too quickly. This didn't fill me with confidence. I asked a contract on the island, a former police officer with good working knowledge of these types of cases, how long we had before police resources would get diverted away. He said that it would likely be just 4 to 6 weeks. Just 3 weeks after Delroy, a couple from Manchester, England, were also murdered on the island in Jamaica, following just 3 weeks after Delroy lost his life the same way. The couple from Manchester, we also covered them. It was a biracial couple. They had been together for many, many, many years, husband and wife. It was his dream to return to the island, and it was her dream to follow her husband wherever he went. It was sad, and they did them badly. But we're going to talk about that on another video. Just to let you know, that year was not a good year for returning residents, and it had many returning residents in foreign lands fearing Some people, that was their year to return to the island. Some people sold their property, put it up for sale. Some people packed up and left Jamaica that year and has never returned. Some people have vowed to never ever retire in Jamaica after this particular year. That year, a total of 8 British returnees were killed on the island, and at least 3 more returnees from the US and Canada were also killed on the island. That's a lot of returnees in one year. Granted, that was a few years ago. Granted, we haven't had that many killed again. And also, to Jamaica's credit, a lot of the time it has to do with things that people had gotten themselves into with others, like salacious side relationships and so on and so forth, right? However, it's still murder, and these murders still happened to returning residents on the island, so that cannot be excused, minimized, or wiped away. The brother went on to say, a few weeks after my brother was stabbed to death, the police arrested 2 men. They had been employed by my brother Delroy to carry out some work on his house. This is the house that he dreamt of, right? As y'all can see, big, beautiful house. But they have been in custody for almost 2 years, and there is still no date for the trial. Please remember that while I'm giving you this information, the trial has already been finalized. They were both found guilty, and we are awaiting sentencing, which should take place in August of 2025. He went on to say, though, for some families that I have spoken to or learned about, who over the years have had loved ones killed after they returned to Jamaica, there have been no arrests for those murders. In other words, oftentimes returnees get killed on the island or visiting the island, and they never find the murderers. Delroy's death set me on a journey to find out why so many returnees in Jamaica were being targeted and what was being done about it in Jamaica. I don't want to stop people going back to pursue their own dreams. It's undoubtedly a beautiful country with amazing people, but I thought that by highlighting what I saw as a underreported issue, I might be able to bring about something lasting from my brother's death. Now, during the 1980s and the 90s, thousands of Windrush generations that arrived in the UK between the late 40s and to the early 70s, they returned to Jamaica. The authorities estimated that up to 10,000 people per year returned from Britain and the US and Canada during those years. The government sees the diaspora population, which is far bigger than the island's population. Remember, we talked about this before, that there were more Jamaicans living outside of Jamaica than there are living inside of the island of Jamaica. So the government sees this group of people as a key Jamaica's economic development, a key to Jamaica's economic development. Remittance matches tourism dollars in amount. And tourism dollars counts for Jamaica's number one contributor to its GDP. That's to tell you how powerful the remittance money from this diaspora is. Not only in remittance, though, but also in direct foreign investments and an inflow of human labor. The number of returnees has declined to just a few thousand now. This could be because there is less migration out of Jamaica, but it could also have something to do with the number of returnees who have been murdered over the years. I'll tell you this, as a person who has done this podcast for quite a number of years, a decade now, I can definitely tell you that returnees being killed, targeted, whether it's by family members, loved ones, friends, associates, or strangers on the island of Jamaica, that has definitely contributed to the number of returnees who are willing to go back to Jamaica and say, this is where I'm going to go back and set up shop. I've been living in the UK. I've been living in Canada. I've been living in the US. I've been living in Sweden or wherever you've been living for too long. It's been 20 years. I have everything I need now. I'm heading back home to build my dream home and set up shop on my island, whether it's retire, walk the beaches every day and pick fresh fruits out of your garden, or just start a new business and a new venture in life. Many people, many, I can't count how many have said, I will never return. SouFlo, y'all can do it if you want to. Of course, I'm the kind of person who has always said, all these murders are not going to keep me from going back to Jamaica. I don't care if I have to go back to Jamaica and murder some people myself. They're not going to keep me from returning. That's what I say. But that's not what a lot of people have said to me. A lot of people have said to me, you say that now while you're young and you're strong and you're fast and you can defend yourself, but wait until you get up in age and you're not that young and that fast and that strong anymore. You start to feel a bit frail and a bit insecure. Therefore, you want to put yourself in a safe place where this is not an issue, where you will be not looked at as him have whole heap of money, you know. A years them man they live a foreign, you know. Watch a big house. Yo, come make we go rob him. Come make we go kill him in at the house. You know? So I'm thinking about those things as well. But I can tell you that definitely it has influenced a lot of people to start choosing places like Ghana and other parts of the continent of Africa, or even the United States of America. Many Jamaicans have retired already in places like the state of Florida. Some have decided to just simply stay put in the UK or wherever else they are at. Written off Jamaica completely because of this. Well, Claude Parchmore, a British Jamaican I know in London, has been going back and forth to the island for a number of years, but he says that the media coverage and the information that is circulating on social media about the potential dangers for returnees has led his children to put pressure on him not to settle there permanently. Daddy, don't do it. Don't do it, Dad. I have heard similar concerns from many within the British Jamaican community. Well, want to go home, you know, but boy, I don't want to be targeted. It's difficult to get figures for the total number of returnees that have been killed, but one Caribbean-based organization estimates that more than 85 British nationals have been killed on the island of Jamaica in the past 2 decades. Jamaica's problem with violence is well documented. Now, if 85 have been killed in the past 20 years, I can tell you that most Jamaicans are not even paying attention to it. The returnees, or those with intentions to return, that would peak at their interest. And it would be a key point in their decision making to go or not to go. However, because Jamaica has experienced over 1,000 murders every year, some years we have climbed up to 1,600 plus. 85 specifically British nationals over 20 years, that kind of flies under the radar. Now, according to the latest figures from the United Nations, Jamaica has the second highest murder rate in the world. With a population of just over 2.8 million people, there has been more than 1,000 murders per year, and that has happened for the past 20 years or so. Could you imagine? Just calculate that number and see how many Jamaicans have been murdered in the past 2 decades. And we're not talking about those who got old and died of just being old and expired. We're not talking about those who died of diseases, illnesses, cancer, heart attack, diabetes. We're not talking about those who die from accidental deaths like motor vehicle accidents, etc. We're just talking about murder victims. That's nearly 50 times the murder rate of the UK. So when somebody is looking from the UK like, should I head to Jamaica and pack it up? You also have to ask yourself, do I want to go live out my last days in somewhere where the murder rate is 50 times higher than where I'm at now? And my kind is looked at as food, money, targeted. Now, for its part, the Jamaican police has long been seen as underpaid, as poorly trained, as understaffed, and as lacking in resources, not to mention as deeply corrupted as well. Now, this is something that the UK Home Office highlighted on its 2018 country report. Now, in addition to corruption and impunity for abuses that were committed by the police, has led to mistrust among the citizens. So a lot of citizens in Jamaica don't work with the police. It's not like they can trust the police. And the report also stated that since 2009, the government of Jamaica has been taking steps to counter some of those problems with a strategy of crime prevention and community safety. How that's been working out, I don't know. What I can tell you is we've been getting the same results every year since about 2009. So you be the judge of how that's been working out as far as government efforts are concerned. Now, the journey that began with my brother, he said, my brother's death has raised many questions about migration and identity and belonging. I'm interjecting as I go along, right? So walk with the story. Migration, identity, and belonging. A lot of us think we still belong to these communities that we came from. What, Mas George? Hi, Miss Green. Hi, Mas Clevey. Morning, Miss Ruby. And these people will look at you and be like, who is that? Is that Miss Laris' grandson, Stephen? Stephen, you come back from England. How you doing, love? Come talk to me, man. See, we have these romanticized things in our minds, right? And the reality is migration hinges on identity and belonging, how you are seen, how you will be identified as, how you identify yourself when you get back to the island, your ability to assimilate, and how deeply into the culture you will be able to assimilate, and if there is a belonging within the community in which you put yourself. Because if you don't belong, obviously you're going to stand out as an outcast, right? The British person who came back, or the American who came back and built his nice house and doesn't associate with anybody around here kind of thing. Now, are returnees being seen as soft targets because they are coming home relatively wealthy after working for decades abroad? And what is that notion of home? You know, we've lived in foreign lands for many years, but we keep on telling ourselves, I don't care how long I've lived in the UK. Jamaica is always my home. 20, 30 years, 40 years, you still saying Jamaica is your home. Only to find out that it doesn't feel so homey when you get there, for some people. It's something I discussed with Delroy Logan, who runs the Jamaica Diaspora Crime Intervention and Prevention Task Force in the UK. Logan, who is a former Scotland Yard superintendent who spent some of his early years in Jamaica, is primarily focused on solutions to Jamaica's wider crime issue. The government's 2030 vision, he explained, is to make Jamaica more secure and more enjoyable. 2030. We are in 2025. That is 5 years away. The murder rate has not changed. I know it's an election year in Jamaica 2025, and every month they keep telling us that for this month, murders have decreased 25%. Now we are at 35%. The Minister of National Security, Dr. Harris Chang, has recently said we're going to be below 1,000 murders this year. The first time in like 30 years or 25 years. The Prime Minister has also said, 1 minute they said 600, we'll be below that. Then they said 1,000, we'll be below that. I think putting your hat where it's hard to reach. They overreached and then realized there's no way we're going to go from over 1,000 to suddenly below 600 because it's an election year. Now, have they been working and doing and making steps to try to make the place safer? Yes, I give them credit for that. Credits to the JCF, credits to the JDF working hand in hand, and credits to the government who is pushing whatever there is they're pushing to make the place better. But how much has it actually changed in permanent change in reduction of murders? That remains to be seen at the end of the year and into another year. He says that much of the issues come down to how people understand the idea of creating home in a place that they left many decades ago. If you still think of it as home after all this time, ask yourself if the same people you grew up with are still there. This is advice he's giving, which I have always said to my SouFLoTV audience. If you are thinking that is your home, are the same people that you grew up with still there? Sometimes you go back to an area and it has changed so much. Nobody there knows you. None of the people know you. So you are a stranger moving into a strange area. The only thing that's familiar to you is the house you probably grew up in, the piece of land that it's on, and even that, somebody else has taken it over or has eyes on it. Don't go back to a place that you haven't visited much and try to immerse yourself without understanding the notion of the haves and the have-nots. That's a big warning. And don't isolate yourself from the community by building some big house on top of the hill. Contribute to the community instead. Be sensitive. Don't start showing off your relative wealth that you came back with. Integrate slowly and don't go as far as to think that you are suddenly a part of the community after all these years, because the reality is you are not. You will most likely be seen as a foreigner, and a foreigner for a long time to come as well. Now, in terms of the people around you, choose them wisely, he said, particularly people you may ask to do work for you or people who you may bring in close to you. To start employing people who aren't recommended could put you at risk. It all seemed like good, simple advice, he said, but what is the government itself doing to communicate this? So during the investigation of my brother's case in 2018, my sisters and I met Jamaica Police Commissioner Major General Anthony Anderson. We suggested at the time that the authorities should place more emphasis on the welfare and the safety and the well-being of these returning residents. Later that year, Anderson came to the UK to speak to the diaspora in London, Manchester, Bristol, and Birmingham, and said that the authorities in Jamaica were taking on broad concerns for safety. And I brought it up with subsequent meetings with the Jamaica High Commission in London. Why, if returnees are so important to the country, was safety for them not given equal weight to the other advice, such as what to do with your finances and how to conduct a relocation? So in February of that year, I returned to Jamaica to explore some of the deeper questions that emerged after Delroy's death. I traveled with a BBC reporter, he said. This is Delroy's brother. He traveled with Nestor McGregor, whose family also has origins in Jamaica. He said that we wanted to ask if there is a connection between returnees' views of their own relationship with their birthplace and the actual reality. We hadn't been in Jamaica long before the problem for returnees were evident. Dwight, our taxi driver from the airport, pointed out that the road that we were traveling on was once a crime hotspot. People working at the airport used to tip them or tip the criminals off. For example, who was carrying large sums of cash and what cars they got in and that type of stuff. This is the taxi driver that picked them up at the airport is telling them all these things. Now, this puts our returning residents in super danger. Could you imagine you just went through the airport and somebody that works there has a cell phone and they send a text message to their criminal friends who are on that road, the airport road, and they say, hey, look out for the red taxi with the XYZ on it. There's a man in that taxi that just changed out £5,000 or £2,000. Him just change out some money, so him have the cash on him right now. You're in dire danger. That's what the taxi driver told them. He said that they would then wait along that stretch and then they would rob the incoming travelers. The Jamaica Constabulary Force has since addressed that problem by creating a special unit whose sole job is to guard this piece of stretch of land. Now, that's not unique to Jamaica. Anywhere you have the haves and the have-nots, people will do what they need to do to survive, is what their taxi driver Dwight said. And it's true. The conversation also revealed that Dwight worked for one of the largest private security firms in Jamaica, a sector that was growing rapidly. Later that evening, Nesta and I visited a local bar in Kingston, and it was good to be back in Jamaica, to smell the spicy seasoned meats and to listen to the soft reggae music. It reminded me of why Delroy had decided to settle here in Jamaica for good. We struck up a conversation with two locals, Mark, a music producer, and Sash, who works in administration. The pair gave us an insight into why returning residents may be targeted. Mark told us that there's a certain level of envy, because anyone who goes overseas is automatically seen as someone who is now wealthy. He said that leaving the island, that's a big endeavor, and it's almost guaranteed that your life and that of your family will improve. So for people who know they'll never leave, they'll never get a chance to do the same that you did, that's where the envy comes from. Sash agrees that, man, listen, there is a lot of jealousy, a lot of jealousy. She says that if you're able to go overseas, whether or not you actually do have a lot of money in the eyes of a regular Jamaican, one who has never left the island, you will be regarded as someone who is wealthy or someone who have money. Now, as you drive around Jamaica, it is evident that security is a major concern, regardless of the affluence of the area. Protecting what you have seems to be a common theme, however little. Although my brother had installed a steel gate and security cameras, he didn't want bars on his windows. He told me he hadn't come to Jamaica to live in a prison. All right, let me stop right there for a second. One of the biggest things that are a mistake that you might make is going to Jamaica, building a house, and then saying to yourself, I'm not putting no bars on my windows because I didn't come here to be in no prison. Listen, if you look around Jamaica, my friend, everybody has bars on their windows, okay? So don't think you coming to the island and not putting bars on your windows is going to work out just fine for you. The residents who live there, they have bars on their windows for a damn good reason. And you better follow suit. This is a part where you must assimilate And it is super important to follow what it is that you see these residents are doing. If you see bars on all the windows, put bars on your windows too. It is that simple. If you have the resources, also put the cameras up. And if you can even afford more than that, have security guards and whatever else you can do. And I know it sounds bad. And I know a lot of people are going to say, you don't need all that, man. But take my foolish advice, right? The more security you can afford, the better your life might be as far as keeping you alive goes. That's just the truth. Okay, there's no need to romanticize. There's no need to pretend. It is what it is. And that's what happens where a lot of people get caught up. They tend to romanticize and pretend. Now, back to the story. So he said, added to that are the hundreds of thousands of tourists who visit the island to enjoy the major attractions such as Dunn's River Fall and the Bob Marley Museum, and to experience a trouble-free stay on the island. So one night, we arranged to meet a group of residents who had returned from the UK a while back in Trelawney, and they explained that the community center we were in had been built by returnees, keen to have a place where they could integrate with the locals and get to know them properly. So over games of dominoes, they told us their stories. All of them spoke glowingly about their experience of returning to Jamaica, but some did highlight the importance of having the right security measures in place. For instance, Yvette. Yvette spent 45 years in England, believes that many of the killings of the returning residents are not random. Quote unquote, she said, it's not like people are just going up to them and killing them. It's often someone they know. When they come from London, we have been taught to be very trusting of our neighbors, so we bring that mentality over here back to Jamaica. But she stressed that she wasn't worried that anything could happen to her. Joyce, who had returned in 1998 after 40 years in the UK, said that she hadn't been expecting people to welcome her back with open arms as a Jamaican. We were received as foreigners, she said. Maybe her positive experience had something to do with the fact that her expectations of homecoming were more realistic than many other people's. The issue of belonging is an interesting one. Are returning residents Jamaican or British? Does it matter? It was a question that arose after Delroy's murder when we asked for help from the British consulate. Delroy held both British and Jamaican citizenship, and when the family came to a meeting in 2018 at the consulate, we were told that he wasn't British or British enough. So they couldn't support us in the same way they would have done if he was a British national altogether. That alone was a shock. On this second visit, I arranged another meeting to clarify this point. And one thing that was agreed was that my brother was British and should have been classed as British. They confirmed that in the case of murder, that British identification should override everything. There were other small things that I think the consulate could have done to help us after the murder. For example, keeping in touch with the police on the island required a local SIM card for our mobile phones, but getting one required the equivalent of a national insurance number. That was difficult since I didn't live or work in Jamaica. This slowed down the process of getting information because the police were reluctant to make expensive calls to a UK number, to fill us in on the progress of the case. But now, as a direct result of my brother's case, the embassy has agreed to provide British visitors who find themselves in the middle of an emergency with local SIM cards. It's a small change, but one that is massive when you're dealing with a world of other problems. So, my last stop on my journey to visit Acting Assistant Police Commissioner Fitz Bailey, I asked him about the judicial process and why there was still no trial date for the two men who were arrested for my brother's murder. Fitzbailey explained that a new judiciary minister had been appointed to deal with the country's extensive backlog of cases. He told me that at the time of Delroy's murder, there was a significant number of robberies against returning residents, and as a result, a special unit had been set up by the High Command to look after these returnees. Each commander should identify returning residents in their local areas and regularly check in with them. It was that bad. And he told me that the government Welcome Home booklet for returning residents has been adapted in recent years in response to the number of deaths. So there's a Welcome Home booklet. I guess this booklet tells you the things to do and not to do. Where it used to focus on telling returning residents the particularities or the particulars of moving, it more focuses on security and staying safe on the island. For example, he says a returnee can now contact the police for a recommendation if they need work doing on their property, and the officers will consult a database of reputable workers. He also added that nationwide, the force was 4,000 officers short, but that they were trying to recruit more officers. But he had this message for returning residents who are unsure about whether to return to Jamaica or not. I still maintain that Jamaica is one of the most beautiful countries in the world, and whilst we have concerns, I don't think the concerns that we have are different to those of any other nation. So I would say that Jamaica is still a safe place, and your contribution to the development of this country is very necessary. Returning to the UK, I feel reassured that the police have promised to look at my brother's case. And I know that even though Delroy is no longer with us, he has achieved what many people never managed to do. And that was to live his dream, albeit it was a short dream lived, but he did live his dream. He retired. He got his dream house on the island. He was there, even though he lost his life living out his dream. Listen, I hope there's something that you can take from this. This was Delroy Walker's brother who gave this valuable piece of information if you listen. So anybody who is thinking, I want to move back to Jamaica, I'm going to build my dream house or purchase my dream house and I'm going to live out my days. This article, I think, answered a lot of questions. How you will be perceived, things not to do, and so on and so forth. Delroy Walker, we hope that his losing of his life will not go in vain and it will help others so they too can achieve the dream but live to enjoy that achievement. Delroy Walker, born the 22nd of August, 1954. He died in Jamaica the 19th of April, 2018. The follow-up was given to us May of 2025 that the two individuals who were arrested and tried for his murder were both found guilty and they will be sentenced in August of 2025. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Are you planning on returning to Jamaica, retiring in Jamaica, building your retirement home there, going back home? What steps and preparations are you taking in the process? Are you familiarizing yourself with the community in which you will be living? Or are you having someone else do the building for you while you are overseas? Are you also having any deep concerns, or are you scared but going anyways? Or are you somebody who has said, I am definitely not going back, and I've signed off on that, and that is what it's going to be? Let's have a talk. This article credits the author is Steve Walker, who is Delroy Walker's brother. The editor was Catherine Westcott. Additional reporter, Nesta McGregor and Nick Davies. The graphics was done by James Percy and Gary Fletcher, and I will use their pictures along with other pictures in this slide. And online producer, James Percy. The photos were taken by Steve Walker, Nesta McGregor, Alamy, and Getty, and they were published May of 2020, albeit 5 years ago. Super, super relevant and still very, very important today and in many years to come. Rest in peace, Delroy Walker. You lost your life, my brother. It's sad. Life goes on in your memory. I'm out. Peace.